Hi everybody, this is Steve Sabludowsky, publisher of BioBuzz.com, and today we have a special guest, Tyler Bridges, who writes for The Advocate and who just penned an article for Politico. Tyler has written two books about David Duke. And we're going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about the U.S. Senate election, about the two books that he wrote about David Duke, and an upcoming book that he just co-authored and that will be coming out. So, good morning, Tyler. How are you doing today?
Great, Steve. Makes me feel like I've done a lot of writing. All that intro.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely have. So, why don't you tell us? First of all, I saw the article. I read it yesterday and this morning. And it was really interesting, especially given the fact that the two books that you did write. So, why don't you just give us a brief background about the article that appeared in Politico that we actually put up on a newsletter yesterday, sent out.
Okay, well, great. I'm glad for the publicity. Yeah, it's a piece. It's for Politico Weekly, which is their weekly magazine, and the article was posted on Friday. And as you mentioned, I have written a lot about David Duke over the years. In fact, I'm his biographer. My first book is called The Rise of David Duke, as you know, and you and I got to know each other back in 89, 90, when you were one of the people who was opposing David Duke, and I was covering him very closely for the Times-Picayune newspaper. And I did a lot of investigative writing over the years on him and chronicled his political rise, and that's what led to The Rise of David Duke, my book. And then for many years, I didn't follow him. I was out of the state. And then he came back on my radar screen this year when he decided to run for the Senate. And that was really prompted by his support of Donald Trump. And so then I wrote a story for Politico Weekly back in March comparing Trump and Duke. I had gone to a Trump rally in Baton Rouge in February and was very struck how much it reminded me of the David Duke rallies of 1990 and 1991 when, as you remember, he ran for the Senate and then for governor. And Duke really tapped into a movement with his race-based message that drew big, adoring crowds. And he raised a lot of money. He was able to do TV ads. And what struck me is that's all gone, or mostly gone. In this race for the Senate, as I write it for Politico Weekly, he hasn't had any big rallies. He's finally been able to raise enough money to advertise kind of bare bones TV ad. His hope is he will make the runoff, and if he did, it would be a national story. But you'll remember that he qualified 2 weeks ago for that debate at Dillard this past Wednesday night. He qualified for that debate by getting 5.1%, with the minimum to qualify was 5%. And that was the highest he'd gotten in any poll. So the polls would have to be off by a huge magnitude for Duke to qualify for the runoff. He would need about 22-23%, I'm guessing, to make the runoff. And he claims he's underpolling. There is evidence of underpolling in the past, but there's no evidence that would be of the magnitude that he would need to qualify for the runoff.
Yeah, I watched his appearance at the debate, and he says he won, and you reported that he said that he won.
I didn't say that he'd won.
No, that he said that he won.
Oh yeah, he said that he won, right? Yeah, I think a lot of people would be turned off by him. It was a very unusual thing he did right after the debate began, where he got in an argument with John Snell. And I've known John Snell for a long time, and he's done a lot of these debates. He's a very even-handed, unflappable guy. And to get in an argument with John Snell is pretty amazing. But I think from David Duke's point of view, Steve, it was probably deliberate on his part. I think he was angry that he felt like he wasn't getting his a chance to address a question.
Right.
But if you want to go to Washington, D.C. and disrupt things, and that's what all the candidates are saying. They're all saying, I'm an outsider. It won't be business as usual with me in Washington. Well, David Duke showed on that debate stage that he is a disruptor. And if he went to Washington, he would be a disruptive force. And so if you're trying to tell people in an anti-Washington mood that you're going to be a disruptor, well, he showed that on the stage Wednesday night.
Yeah, without question. From my view, at least, I think the first altercation was on the Obamacare question. He was attacked by Carolyn Fayard, and he wanted to respond, and he also wanted to answer the Obamacare question, and Snell tried to put it all together within his 1 minute or 2 minute time frame, and he got upset about that. And but I guess, do you think he got any mileage out of it? I mean, because obviously the key issue for a lot of people, including Donald Trump, is being the disruptor, and that plays very well.
I think anytime there's a microphone in front of David Duke's face, I'm sorry, I just said any time, but I would say almost any time it's beneficial for him. He will turn off a lot of people, and that's why he's only won one race out of the, 7 or 8 or 9 that he's run. But people who want deep-seated change, people who think the system is rigged, people who like his white identity, race-based message, that narrow slice of the electorate will respond favorably to his message. So, David Duke's a very, very intelligent guy. You may not like him, you may not like his views, but he is an intelligent guy, and I think he had a clear message that he was trying to deliver in that debate Wednesday night, and I think he did deliver it.
Yeah, he did. There's no question about that. I mean, I totally agree. There was a sort of like a theme to the article that is kind of like, I want to say, the rise and fall of, in the sense of David Duke. It wasn't really a fall, but
well, certainly it's a fall from the days when you were one of those people opposing him 25 years ago, and the Louisiana Coalition Against Nazism and Racism was opposing him. I wrote my book, published in 1994. I deliberately called it The Rise of David Duke, because I always thought there was going to be the chance for a political comeback. There's so many people in politics in this country's history who've been written off, who made comebacks, and I always thought there was that possibility. And I've drawn the conclusion, after talking to Duke, after talking to his people, after covering this campaign for the Advocate newspaper, that we are now seeing the fall, that we're now seeing David Duke's last stand, and that's what I lay out in the Politico Weekly article.
Right. I was going to say that in viewing Duke on TV the other night, it looked to me like he was almost reverting to where he was when he first started. It seemed.
I think that's a very interesting observation. Back in the 70s when he was in the Klan, and then the 1980s when he headed the group that he created, the National Association for the Advancement of White People, he could be very disruptive, trying to bring attention to himself, and would get upset easily. We did not see that in 1990 and 1991. He was not as disruptive. I went on to those rallies of his, and they were very sort of calm affairs in the message that he delivered. Now, people would get excited, they would chant his name, but maybe more in these polarized times, he's gone back to more of that kind of a message, or maybe just that he's not practiced. He went to maybe 2 or 3 campaign forums that people tried to shut him out of the other ones. He had not participated in the first debate. He did not qualify. And I'm guessing that in 1990 and 1991, when he again ran for the Senate and for governor, he was very practiced and at how he delivered his message, and also dealing with insults or perceived insults. And he's probably out of practice.
He was actually screaming. I mean, that's something I've never seen, of him, and I just thought that was so bizarre, and gets to what you're referring to, not polished at all, maybe out of practice. So at the end of the debate, everybody else dispersed.
Well, they came into the media room.
Yeah, but while he was still at the podium there.
Yeah, just so your readers know, your viewers know this, the debate at Dillard took place in what's called George's Auditorium, named after John George is the owner of the Advocate newspaper, and it was at a university, but no students were allowed to sit in the audience. The public was not allowed, and I think what they were trying to do, Raycom Media, the organizers of the debate, they were trying to prevent anybody standing up and trying to disrupt the event. Right. Or through applause, and that's understandable. What I never understood, and nor did any of my journalistic colleagues, is why we were not allowed in the auditorium, the empty auditorium. Right. So as soon as the debate ended, I had to quickly file my story, but I did see later that as everyone left the stage, Duke was still there, and his mic was now turned off. The debate was over. He was yelling, as you said. And I think he was yelling at John Snell that he was upset over some things from the debate. And the reason I'm guessing this is because then he immediately came into the press room, and all the other candidates had already come in there. Sometimes it's called the spin room. Mm-hmm. And the candidates were talking to some of the reporters. I was not talking to any of the candidates. I did not want to talk to any of the candidates because I had to very quickly file my story, so I wanted no disruption. And all of a sudden, David Duke came into the room and started disrupting things. He started shouting and offered his complaints. Some of these things I describe in the article that I wrote for Politico Weekly, and the cameramen and photographers who were paying attention to the other candidates immediately abandoned them for Duke. And I think the other candidates saw Duke, and they didn't want to be photographed with him. They didn't want to shake hands with him, so they all immediately left, one way or the other, the media room.
That's so bizarre.
Yeah, and meanwhile, we haven't even talked about. Meanwhile, outside there was 50 to 75 protesters, some Dillard students, others not, who had been chanting, trying to get attention for themselves, and then they tried to get in a door. To get into the building, I guess, to get into the auditorium, and I think the police did the right thing to keep them out of there. Mm-hmm. Otherwise they would have tried to disrupt the debate, and I don't think that would have been right. But the police twice used pepper spray on those protesters outside. Duke called them the members of the Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. I don't know who exactly all they were. I know some of them were Dillard students. I know others were not. But so it was wild outside the building, and it was wild inside the building too.
There's been some criticism of Dillard and I guess Raycom for allowing him. I'm just wondering, I know that there was a different, the last televised debate, there was also the 5%, and I think there was, what, $1 million?
Yeah, each candidate had to raise $1 million. The criticism of Raycom is on several fronts. One is there are people who do not believe that Duke actually qualified for the debate. Again, the threshold was 5%. Mason-Dixon did a poll, and Raycom announced that Duke scored 5.1%. There are people who do not believe that Duke actually scored that. Raycom just wanted to bring Duke into the event so there could be greater attention and publicity and higher ratings. Now, no one has presented evidence otherwise. I'll assume that Raycom is telling the truth there. Then the debate had already been scheduled to be at Dillard. Now, someone could have thought ahead, hey, David Duke might qualify. I don't know how much in advance they made the decision to hold it at Dillard. Now, Duke qualified for the race in late July. But and then he qualified for the debate 2 weeks ago, and I think at that point Raycom was in a tough spot, and they knew there was a chance that people would try to disrupt the debate. So I can understand, as I mentioned, the argument that, or the decision to keep out the general public from the event, that unlike the one at Louisiana Tech 2 weeks ago where anybody could sit in the hall there, Duke was not there. He had not qualified. It was just the other 5 candidates. I don't understand, though, why the media, why we reporters were not allowed in that big empty auditorium.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely strange. You know, somebody mentioned to me that, you know, they should not have allowed him, even though he did qualify. And when that person said that, I was reminded, in my own mind at least, of the time back in, was it '89, where Phil Johnson, Channel 4, did an editorial, I think the day before the election or 2 days before the election, denouncing David Duke, I believe it was, and David Duke filed a lawsuit and was allowed to have, what, 5 minutes of free airtime. Do you remember my facts?
I remember something about that. Yeah, here's my attitude on that, Steve. I thought Duke should be allowed to attend any forum that the other candidates are invited to, that there should be the same standard for all of the candidates. And if Duke qualified for that event, I think he had every right to be there. I don't see there's any justification for not allowing him to be at Dillard. And if you don't like David Duke, you know, defeat him in the ways that through democracy, defeat him through having better ideas, defeat him by getting your voters out on election day, defeat him through having better TV commercials. I think that's the better way than if you don't like the guy. You know, I remember in 1991 he got 670,000 votes. He got something like 55% of the white vote. He's got more votes than any of those candidates on stage, except perhaps John Kennedy in any of his races. So I think he deserved a right to offer his point of view, and if you don't like it, defeat him. Right.
And actually, that's his modus operandi, which is to play the victim. And that, you know, he is against everybody, the David and Goliath type of situation that is going to, you know, that is trying to slay the media, slay, you know, the institutions and so on. He came out pretty strong in terms of his anti-Jewish, although he didn't really, you know, go into like he does on his website, on his radio, etc. He has mollified a little bit.
Well, what he does is, in election season, he doesn't talk about Jews. As you know, and I know, that's his true, deep, abiding passion, is that Jews are bent on undermining the white race. And during election season, voters don't get that. They get maybe a racially based message, racially intolerant, talking about affirmative action, minority set-asides, and quotas back in the day. Today, illegal immigration. Duke he'll talk about the media. He'll attack the media. I was noticing this morning that on the New York Times website, they had a video of how Donald Trump will denounce the media at his rallies, and people in the crowd at his rallies will start yelling things at the media. So just like Trump, Duke taps into anti-media feelings. In Duke's mind, it's the media is controlled by the Jews, and it's part of a conspiracy. In Duke's mind, when he talks about the international banking system, he's talking about the Jews. When he's talking about communists, he believes that you know, he's talking about the Jews. When he's talking about illegal immigration, he really believes that there's a direct conspiracy by Jews to bring in illegal aliens to poison the white gene pool. So his views are where he comes from is very different from Donald Trump, but they do end up at the same place in many issues.
Now, the other day, I read that Donald Trump's son, Eric, made, I think, a remarkable offensive statement about Duke deserving a bullet in his head. Have you seen anything further about that? Or
I have not seen anything further about that. And unfortunately, there have been several different comments either from the son or from the father about violence. And again, if you don't like David Duke, defeat them at the ballot box, defeat them through having better ideas, not through violence.
Funny that Donald Trump really hasn't said anything even close to anything like that, but Eric, the son, did. I just thought that was really kind of interesting. Not that, you know, violence should be resort for anything. So let's. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about? Because I wanted to talk about your new book.
Yeah, let's just take a minute if we could to do that.
Sure. Okay. So the name of the new book is The Long Shot. Am I correct?
I've written a book on last year's the 2015 governor's race with Jeremy Alford, a terrific reporter in Baton Rouge. Your inside viewers will know that he replaced John McGinnis.
Right.
He's got a weekly report and writes a column and often appears on TV. So Jeremy and I have just sent off to the printer a book that's called Long Shot, A Senator, a Soldier, a Serious Sin, an Epic Louisiana Election. And so our book Long Shot will be out in about a month. We have a website, Louisiana Long Shot, if people want to pre-order, and they could they could contact me and Jeremy. We'll be selling books with autographing them as well. So the book's going to be out again in about a month, and great Christmas gift.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think I'll give one to David Vitter. That's a joke.
Okay.
Yeah. So, okay, Tyler Bridges will definitely do this again prior to or right after the book comes out, and maybe you and the co-author can be on the same interview, and we can kind of discuss it. Very interesting topic, and really look forward to it. Absolutely. Take care of yourself, okay?
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, thank you. And let me go ahead and stop this.